Well, I see we have a church in Hampton on the docket today. Here. I second Vicky. And my laptop is frozen.
Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the Henry County Zoning Board meeting Thursday, July 26, 2018. This meeting is being televised live on Charter Channel 180 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99 and will rebroadcast every Thursday at 7:30 p.m., Saturday at 12:30 p.m., and is available by video on demand on county website. Now would be a good time to turn off your cell phones or laptops. If you wish to speak, you will need to fill out a public hearing speaking card. We'll allot 10 minutes for those in favor of a case and 10 minutes for those in opposition of a case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they all share in the 10-minute slot. Address the board and not the audience. We will now have the Invocation and Pledge by Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Let's have a prayer, then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, we want to thank you for this time we have together. We thank you for the opportunity to live in a country where we can voice our opinions and plan our communities like we are here. We ask you for a good meeting, for us to have good dialogue and patience. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Now let's say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. This meeting is now called to order. Do I have a motion for acceptance of the agenda?
Motion.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have any staff comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Case number VR 1806 for the Kroger Company LLC for property at 101 Fairview Road has been postponed by the applicant and will not be heard tonight.
Okay. All right. In that case, we'd like to move forward and hear the first case.
VR 1805, Masala Cottage LLC of Mcdonough, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for property located at 931 Highway 155 South in land lot 221 of the 7th District. The property consists of 0.379 plus or minus acres and the request is to reduce rear setback requirement in District 2, and the staff report is presented by Mrs. Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening, Chair and Board.
Good evening.
The applicant tonight is requesting a variance to reduce the side yard setback of 10 feet to 2.5 feet, which is highlighted in pink on the overhead, and a variance to reduce the required separation of a building from an accessory structure from 10 feet to 5 feet, which is highlighted in yellow. The proposed accessory structure would be a storage container behind the principal structure, which would be utilized by the restaurant occupying the principal structure. Planning and zoning staff recommends denial of this request, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff?
I don't at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
If not, we'd like to call the applicant forward. Sir, if you will, state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Bhavesh Patel, and my residential address is 905 Hunters Club Lane, Norcross, Georgia.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add to staff comments?
Not really. Just to say that the existing building is quite small, and therefore we are requesting the variance to put in the extra storage. That's all. So.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
What size building
It's 1,700 square feet
with a storage shed?
without the storage. The storage is 20 by 8 feet.
Anyone else? Mr. Richard?
In the report, this is described as a storage container. Is this something like a container that would be moved on a truck, or is this, something that's permanently affixed to the ground?
It's sort of a standard 20-foot container, which would be placed on the ground.
All right, so it's not a portable structure?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Have anything, Ms. King?
For staff, maybe if you could just explain a little bit the recommendation on denial. I know you've got the criteria, but just so that we understand a little better in terms of
Yes, ma'am.
several of the main points on that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can go through that.
Sure.
It's based, of course, like you said, on our criteria points and meeting those. We found that there wasn't really any hardship. It's a storage container, perhaps it's not necessary that it's there. It's not for me to say, but there wasn't enough of a hardship for us to recommend approval of it. Let me see. Basically, the circumstance is a result of the actions by the applicant because they would like to place a storage container there. Again, that's not something that's required to use the property for commercial purposes, so that was sort of the logic behind our recommendation.
Okay, that helps, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, Ms. Consiglio?
Well, and I kind of just get in the weeds of it, probably shouldn't even ask the question, but I do want to ask it. So if you need an extra storage, what would you be putting in the storage container? I mean, why, food? Hopefully not.
Yes, dry food and to-go containers and catering containers.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Yes, I want to make clear, this is a container, not a storage building.
Yes, instead of putting up a building, the proposal is to put a standard 20-foot container on the ground, yes, and then use that as a storage.
Any additional questions? Okay, at this time, you may be seated, sir. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Mr. Richard?
Back to my original question, is this a structure or a container that will be affixed to the ground by a footing, or is it one that can be moved at a later date after it's no longer needed?
Yes, it can be moved later when it's no longer needed.
All right, so it's like one of these big sea containers that you see on a truck, is that what it is?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Oh, okay, that was my original question. I didn't quite understand your response at that time.
Sorry if my response was not clear.
Really, one more quick question for staff. Are you recommending denial because it's a container or just the
No.
location?
No, neither. Basically because variances are for very specific things, such as the setback would be appropriate, but there has to be some sort of hardship. And we didn't find that there was enough of a hardship to recommend approval for this, like topography or something like that. Also, this is a result of the actions by the applicant because a storage container isn't necessarily required to use the property for commercial purposes, which is what it's zoned for.
Okay, and I have a quick question for staff as well. Now, did the applicant come forward and ask for a permit, or how did it progress?
I'm not sure if the applicant went to the building department first. That might be best for him to answer.
Okay.
Yes, I did proceed request for permission from the building department, and then they referred me to the zoning. They said my first step would be to get a variance approval from the zoning department before coming to the building department.
And at that point, they advised you that it did not meet code, basically, or you would
No,
need
they,
a variance?
they just referred me back to the zoning. They didn't give their opinion or anything.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions? Okay. Okay, you may be seated, sir. At
Thank
this
you.
time, we would like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. 10 minutes for anyone that would like to speak in favor of the case. Okay. No one's coming forward. We'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition of the case. Okay. All right. Does the board have any additional questions for staff or the applicant?
I have a question. Is that a road that's on the back side of that?
This is actually a railroad. This is their right.
Okay. So that's just a line. Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
what's the, so it's the setback from the railroad?
It's just a property line still. It would be 10 feet per usual.
So I guess my question is, does the railroad own it from the tracks to that line? Who owns from the tracks to the line?
Yes, ma'am. Their right-of-way likely continues to this point.
Okay, okay. I thought that was a road. Okay.
Okay.
It's different.
Any additional questions? Okay, if there's no question, we'd like to call the case, please.
VR 1805, Masala Cottage LLC of McDonough, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for property located at 931 Highway 155 South in land lot 221 of the 7th District. The property consists of 0.379 plus or minus acres, and the request is to reduce the rear yard setback requirement. This is District 2, and the staff report was presented by Mrs. Julie Yoder. She's a planner too.
Okay, we have heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I do. I make a motion that the board agrees with staff to deny this request.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second by Mr. Richard. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Here, the next case, please.
The next case is CU 1808H. Hampton First Baptist Church of Hampton, Georgia requests a conditional use for property located at 85 Mcdonough Street, in Land Lot 144 of the 3rd District and Land Lot 248 of the 6th District. The property consists of 32.18 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a church. The staff report is presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisiel.
Good evening, Mr. Chair,
Good evening.
board members. The request before you tonight is located within the city of Hampton. In this location, the subject property is actually the acreage behind the existing Hampton First Baptist Church. So it's illustrated, outlined in green and hatched in green on the overhead and also in your exhibit books. The zoning for this area, the church itself is zoned OI, which is office institutional, which is the appropriate zoning district for the church. The property behind the OI zoned portion of the church's holdings is zoned R2, which is a single-family residential zoning district, which was added to the church property at a later time. The request before you tonight is a request for a conditional use for church in order to expand the campus of the existing church. And the applicant has indicated that the actual plan for the expansion is the development of athletic fields in the indicated portion of the church's property as indicated on the site plan within your exhibit books. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request. We have noted that this is something that is typical for a church use. Athletic fields is a typical accessory use of the principal use of the property for religious services and so forth. We do recommend approval of the applicant's request. At this time, I would also like to note that we have received a petition from several of the property owners in the immediate area. They have indicated that they would like for 2 conditions to be considered for the subject property, and I'll get those conditions right now. One moment, please. Those conditions, number 1, would be no field or parking lights on the new land usage, and number 2, no loudspeakers or PA systems. And I'm sure that during the public comment time they can elaborate on that, and I'd be pleased to. Yes, number 1 would be no field or parking lot lights on the new land usage, and number 2, no loudspeakers or PA system. And I'd be pleased to answer further questions.
Okay. Mr. Bailey, do you have any questions for? No. Okay. Does any of the board members have any questions for the staff?
I'm just a little leery with the lights.
Okay.
I mean, I get that at night, late at night, you would not want, you're a residential person, you're on your back deck, all of that. But I just want the board to, just think, if we say no lights, then later, if they want to hold something in the fall, soccer or something, and it's over, say, at 9 o'clock, they may want lights, so.
We, in the past, if I may, Mr. Chair, there has been a similar case in the county, and there was a prohibition against the field lights. Now, regarding the parking lot lights, the applicant is not proposing an expansion of the parking lot onto the subject property at this time. If they were, perhaps that may be a safety issue for parking and so forth, but it seems appropriate for there to be a prohibition against the field lights. And in conversation with at least one of the adjoining property owners, in the future, because the applicant's not even proposing the field lights, But in the future, if they change their mind, the residents have indicated that they would like for this to come back before the city council. And that is something that the applicant could do to request a modification of this zoning condition in the future if that's something that they would like to do. And as an aside, Mr. Chair, this hearing is a little different than the conditional uses that we hear for properties within the county. This board will make a recommendation to the city council, and the city council will actually make the decision on this conditional use.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions for staff? Stacy, I do have a question. Now, what is the county code in reference to lights on a field? Or I know it's required that we have lights in the parking area, but they're not making any addition to the parking area. So what is the county code for lights in the field itself?
So the county code, the Unified Land Development Code, I don't recall specific provisions for field lights or even requirements for field lights. I would have to take a second look at that. However, the Unified Land Development Code would not be binding on the subject property since it's within the city of Hampton, and the city of Hampton's current zoning code does not mention the field lights.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, at this time, we'd like the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Wayne Smith, my address 260 Lawrenceville Street. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm a member, I'm actually a trustee of the church, but I'm also an engineer and designer by trade and profession. So I'm here on behalf of my church. Pastor Craig McAdams sends his regrets with 3 teenage boys in school and it being open house. He had to be 2 or 3 places at once and couldn't be here, unfortunately, but he sends his regards. Certainly, as we presented in our actual letter of intent, the indication was we have no present intention to add lights. I'll admit I'm a little, if in fact parking becomes an issue in the future, we would want to have parking lights in the parking arena for safety for the folks that come and go. Again, that's not a part of the plan that's been presented as best we know. This is really, first and foremost, it's an attempt to bring this property formally into the ability for the church to utilize it. It was zoned residential, it was zoned R2, was planned for a single-family residential subdivision many years ago. Market conditions and things being what they were, that was never developed, and the church actually acquired the property some time ago. So we've held the property with no activity on it for a number of years. The plan right now, as has been presented, is to grade and stabilize enough of the site to allow for 3 combination youth football and soccer fields. The intent, again, is that those would be activities that would be conducted during the day. We recognize that we're surrounded by existing residential subdivisions. I'm not sure that what we're proposing would be worse than what might happen if they had 30 or 40 or 50 residential lots in behind them, but that, again, that's immaterial. So I'm here tonight to answer any questions, address any concerns you might have on behalf of the church.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do. I think we can add no loudspeakers or lights. I think that's no problem at all. Do we require that for this area?
Certainly, y'all, that's within your right to make that recommendation. As has been pointed out, the ultimate determination will be made by the mayor and council. I stand here before you tonight telling you that at the present plan, we have no intention of doing either.
So I can't disagree with that based on what I know at this point.
What about the rest of the property? You got a big area there, a lot of property. Is there any plan to use the remainder?
We have, Mr. Bailey, one of the things that's been discussed is a walking trail of some type, maybe somewhat of a nature-type walking trail. Much of the lower rear part of the property is low. Some of it's a little bit wet. You may be aware the city of Hampton has an existing sanitary sewer lift station just off of our property. They have underground power that runs across this tract from Shelby Street over to serve the subdivision to our east. So there are some existing constraints as to what we could do, but frankly, beyond the fields that are shown and the possibility of a walking trail, we have no other prospective uses at this time.
You had one item I saw in there about movies, night at the movies or something like that.
Well, and I bring that up only because we have done that outside for special occasions on our current facility. And so the thought was that, quite honestly, if we have a large flat area graded out for a ball field, we do have required buffers surrounding the site. So we're leaving existing trees and vegetation around the perimeter of the site adjacent to these additional residential areas. The only thought was that we have a big wide open flat space. We wouldn't have all of the street lights and glare that would happen. It would be a good place to have a family movie night, maybe once a year or something. Again, I can't tell you that will happen or it won't happen. It's just trying to suggest how we would intend to use the property moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Consiglia?
I think I take exception to a prohibition on lights. The reason being is because it's zoned now for residential, and if you put houses in there, they're gonna have street lights. So that just, to me, to say no lights, when right now, if they built it out, there could be street lights. Then you have residents in there that would have parties and there would be music, and you don't have a prohibition on them not having music and movie nights and things like that. So to say, and it's 32 acres, and to say they can't have lights and have a PA system, how are you going to show a movie without a PA system? I'm just saying, to me, it's a little restrictive when you've got the buffer, and let that be a condition that they keep that buffer up, they never could touch that, because that's going to like help with the glare and stuff. Or maybe put a condition on how many lights they could have, but to say no lights when you could have a residential area there that has street lights. Then what are you going to do? Say, we don't want street lights anymore? So to say there's a prohibition on lights, I don't know, to me that just seems like a little restrictive.
Okay.
Especially for a soccer field and like you said, in the fall when they're having festivals and stuff. I mean, that's a safety concern. I mean, why would you not want to have lights? I just don't understand that. But I'm one of those that likes lights.
Any additional questions?
I do. Do you know approximately how much of that 32 acres, those three, the combination of the soccer and football fields, will take up?
I'm going to estimate approximately 25% of it. And again, when I say that obviously won't all be fields. These fields are drawn to scale. Right. To meet the standards of the Upward Sports Program, which is a national program. And so the intention is to build one field that could serve youth flag football, and also be used, if you could put two fields running the other direction, for youth soccer. So that's the intention of these fields, is to be multi-purpose and to serve those two sports specifically. But again, I would estimate right now that there's fairly significant elevation change across the site. We're going to have to accommodate the drainage and make sure we control that and mitigate that on site. But I still believe we'll be actually developing less than 25% of it at this time.
I mean, it's a lot of land. Thank you.
I have a question from Mr. Richard.
Yes. Has any of the land that's been timbered, has that encroached into the 50-foot, setback that's shown on the plat?
Jim, that setback is actually for the fields. The condition that was placed on the timbering permit was a minimum of a 20-foot undisturbed buffer, and that has been maintained around the entire perimeter.
Okay, thank you.
Staff. Two issues, lighting and noise. Any limits or restrictions defined by the county for noise, for PA systems and such?
So it's typical for a jurisdiction such as the city of Hampton to have a noise ordinance. It's typical for such a noise ordinance to not allow for a certain level of noise to continue past 10 o'clock. If this conditional use is approved, no matter what the use is, it wouldn't be able to be a nuisance or exceed those limits that would be set by a noise ordinance. So that this is not a license to violate the noise ordinance.
Okay, lighting now. I know I've been around fields where there's sporting activities. You got high mass lighting providing a very high level of light. You can't see the field if you don't have a large amount of light. Racetracks, you got a high intensity of lighting. And then there's lighting for security, lower level downcast lighting where people can see around. Is that covered in any way? I know we discussed lighting before in businesses and such.
Right. So it's very typical for there to be a zoning condition that would limit the lighting to be downcast to such an extent that there would be no light pollution onto adjoining properties and so forth. I don't recall that the current zoning code for the city specifies downcast lighting. I'm just not sure at this time. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Okay, I have a question for the applicant. Sir, now, will this soccer, is it within a soccer league, or are these soccer members of the church, or what are we having here?
The intention is to provide recreational opportunities for the community at large. It would not be exclusive to church members, but frankly, a community outreach type initiative that allows, right now in the Hampton area, there's a cluster of baseball fields at what was the old North 40 Park, and there's very little other recreational area. So our pastor sees this as a need in the community, and we have property that's unutilized, and we'd like to use it to help address that need in a positive way.
And if you was gonna put a time frame on it, maybe what time of night would you shut this down?
Well, again, at this point, we plan no outdoor lights, so at this point, any of the activities that we had relating to the sports fields would be daytime only.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Any additional questions? Ms. Consigli.
Somebody needs to tell Eagles Landing High School to stop their band because I can hear it all the way at my house. You see what I'm saying? I mean, to me, this is a church helping a community, and it's giving youth something to do, getting them off the streets. And if that falls over into the night, and if we can have something where the lights are downcast or something like that, and I understand, you don't want the big stadium lights. I understand that. Nobody wants that in their backyard.
I can assure you we can't afford those.
Right. But lights for security, or like if you want to extend a parking lot, or have it where, there's a festival and it kind of spills over, into the evening, especially in the fall, where it gets just, dark pretty, because kids are in school until, 4 o'clock, and then it gets dark at 5, and then when are you going to have soccer, So I'm just, like I said, to have a restriction on that, and, kids make noise just screaming, down the sidewalk. So that's my comment. I'm done. I'm done.
Any additional
questions? You
questions?
can hear the tuba. I do for Stacy.
I can, and the drums. I love it. I love to hear the music, but it's like we have a noise ordinance because somebody needs to tell them to be quiet.
Okay.
Can you divulge how many residents asked for that
Yes.
light?
We have 19 that signed the petition.
How many?
19.
19.
Okay.
And about how many houses do you know in that? Do you know? Anyone know?
I'm sorry, I was not aware of the petition, and to my knowledge, they've not approached anyone at the church to discuss it with them ahead of time.
Okay. Any additional questions? Stacy is getting with me.
Stacy, it looks like
Yeah.
there's two per most of those houses.
As far as properties that share a property line with the subject property, we could sit down and count, but I suppose we could estimate. What do you think, man?
As long as I don't have to take my shoes off, I can count that high, and I estimate 19 lots around the entire perimeter of the 32 acres that would be, quote, adjacent to our property.
And those are lots that share a property line. These folks that signed the petition, they put their addresses, and it's likely that they extend into the community, not necessarily sharing a property line.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, sir, you may be seated.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. Speaking in favor of the case. No one's coming forward. We would like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition of the case. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. 10 minutes.
My name is Bill Lindsay. Good evening, council. I'm at 91 Dogwood Ridge, Hampton, Georgia. It's kind of a misnomer. I'm not against this. To start with, everybody has signed this is actually for the soccer fields. A lot of people are concerned about the pollution of noise and light. That's all. Is we have several people that work a variety of shifts. We have people in our subdivision that work at the FAA Center, and they work a lot of rotating shifts. Billy and Liz do. My wife is a flight attendant. Sometimes she's up at 4 in the morning, going to bed at 6 at night. So there's a lot of variation in our subdivision as far as the people go in their work structure. The soccer fields, the football fields are welcome in our community. The ball fields, the baseball fields in Hampton, they don't have a PA system on them. They have lights on them. They have the stadium lights, the long, tall pole lights, and you can see them all the way from Main Street, okay? So there's not an athletic field that the county owns that backs up that close to property that would have those type of amenities, the lights and the PA systems and all that stuff. Avalon, Richard Craig, all Avalon Field is across the street 100 or 200 yards from the nearest subdivision property, for example, okay? So that's our only concern. We're not against this. We're not anti-youth. My kids grew up playing league sports, travel ball, everything in Henry County. We are all for this. Everybody, like I said, in the subdivision is for it. It's a good use of the property. We just want a restriction on it as far as that goes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And of that, by the way, the 19 people are from the Dogwood Lakes community. There are more people, obviously, on the other side of the lake that I didn't even go to when the sign for this. So this is everybody that's on the ridge side of the street and the other side of the stuff. So it's not out of that group. There was only about 4 or 5 houses that did not sign because they weren't home. Everybody but one person signed that lives on that street.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay?
All right. Anything else?
No, sir. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We have additional time. Anyone else speaking in opposition of this? No one's coming forward. Any additional questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, if not, you may call the case.
CU 1808H, Hampton First Baptist Church of Hampton, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 85 Mcdonough Street in Land Lot 144 of the 3rd District and Land Lot 248 of the 6th District. The property consists of 32.18 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a church in the city of Hampton.
Heard the case, do we have a motion?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion, we recommend to the city of Hampton approval of CU 18-08-8 with 2 restrictions, 1, no on-field parking, and 2, that lighting be downcast.
Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Here, the next case, please.
Our next case is CU 1807. Sheila Petty of Mcdonough, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 1831 Highway 81 West in Land Lot 204 of the 6th District. The property consists of 4.32 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an event facility in the 2nd District.
Good evening again. The applicant in this case is requesting a conditional use so that she may have an event facility on her property in a residential zoning district. Her intention is to host events for family and friends, such as weddings and milestone celebrations. Per the ULDC, she will be limited to no more than 5 events per year, with no more than 1 event a month. Also, she will still be required to come to Planning and Zoning to apply for special event permits for each event. After reviewing her site plan, it appears that she meets the standards for an event facility in the RA zoning district. And with that being said, Planning and Zoning staff recommend approval of this request. I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff?
I do.
Okay.
Do we have a limit on the number of events?
Yes, ma'am. She will
Yes.
be limited to no more than 5 a year and 1 a month. And she will still have to come to us for a permit for each event, so we will know exactly what's going on every time.
Okay, 1 per month. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for staff?
The 1 per month,
Yes.
that's 12.
No, I mean, she can have up to 5 a year, but can only have 1 of those a month.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't,
she
and
can
not,
have 2 in, okay, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
I can do the math now.
I understand.
Here's the calculator.
I went to school in Tennessee.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. If not, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Chairman and the board. My name is Sheila Petty. I live at 1831 Highway 81 West in Mcdonough.
Okay. Ms. Sheila, do you have anything you'd like to add to staff recommendation?
Nothing except that I'm trying to respect the laws of the county by applying for these permits. It's just for family and friends and the groups that I am part of, the women's groups and organizations, and I'd just like to do everything above board so that everyone knows what's going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does the board have questions for the applicant?
I do.
Okay.
So family and friends, and then events for groups that you're associated with. I'm guessing like a family reunion is what
Family
you're thinking?
reunion,
Or
church organizations, women's groups, you know, like a women's retreat, things of that nature. And the property itself has its own parking. We can park about 40 to 50 cars, depending on size. So it's, you know, it wouldn't come off of the property at all. In other words, to disturb the neighbors of the surrounding area.
So you'd be primarily inside or outside or both?
Both. I have a 4.32 acre lot that has an in-ground pool and patio and deck and stuff in the back, so we'll be utilizing that. Then I have a 1,500 square foot building that I'll be using if I need to set up tables for dinner or reception or whatever, or for dancing or whatever. So that's how I plan to use it.
So these will all be not-for-profit events, or you'll make money?
Not-for-profit.
All non,
Not for profit. Of course, I'd have to cover my expenses,
right,
yeah.
of course, okay.
I have additional questions on this. I would take Mr. Richard first.
Yes, I see that on the plat that you gave us that, that the gravel portion of your driveway, that there is a slight encroachment on some adjacent property. Will that be a problem or an issue with your neighbors?
I wasn't aware of any slight encroachment. I had a survey and I was not made aware of that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
Oh, okay, I see right there, yeah. Okay. Well, what we have done is put up a privacy fence on that side, so there would be no actual usage of that encroachment that you're talking about. We put it up on the property, up inside the property line.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any traffic circulation through that area?
Not past that fence, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Consiglio?
So I guess this is for staff. So is there any like parking regulations that they have to meet for an event facility?
No, ma'am, because she's not doing this for financial or pecuniary gain, so she wouldn't be required to have a business license, which means she wouldn't be required to have paved parking. She could park where she likes on her property.
Okay, so, and I guess that was kind of the question that I was gonna ask, and I so you're not gonna charge for someone to come and hold an event there, did I hear that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so that means you wouldn't have to have a business license?
Right.
Okay, but you said something about recouping costs for the food, and how are you gonna do that?
Well, we would probably, if it's a group, a specific group, like my women's group or whatever, they'd have to pay, each person would chip in a fee towards food, catering, cleanup, things of that sort.
So that is a charge?
Well, it's a charge, but it's not a profitable charge. It's covering the costs.
Wouldn't you have to have a business license to do that, though?
What the business license has advised us is that there has to be pecuniary gain, and we've interpreted this as not being pecuniary gain, just recouping the costs of holding an event, but they wouldn't be paying the applicant per se. If that were to change, then a business license would certainly be required.
So I guess I could look at it this way. If they charged $100 to use the facility and then charge for the food, that's what goes over and beyond the event.
That
so they
seems
could
very
actually
different.
charge for the use of the food in the facility. Okay.
Yes.
I just wondered how you made that difference. Okay.
Any additional questions? If there's no additional questions, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. Anyone would like to speak in favor of the case? If not, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition of the case. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Paget, 1820 Highway 81 West, Mcdonough, Georgia. I live directly across the street or highway from this residence. I have many concerns. I'm going to try to be brief because I know there's some other people here that want to speak in opposition. I have if anybody's familiar with 81 West, they know that we've had many issues there with accidents at Chambers Road. And recently, in the last year, we've had a four-way stop sign installed there. This is a very, very busy road with 18-wheeler traffic. So we have a problem with traffic. I have another issue with property value. Trash issue, which I think somebody brought up here, that how you're going to dispose any event I've ever been to, there's always a trash issue to dispose of. This property is not capable of handling a trash issue. Parking, I do commercial industrial site preparation. I've been doing it for 37 years. Done a lot of work in Henry County, all over metro Atlanta. I know about parking, and there's not enough parking on that property. It's noise. I want to know about alcohol that's going to be served, and I'd like to know if there's going to be a sign indicating the property. The traffic, and I'm going to try to be real brief about this. I have a real nice driveway and about 4 acres of grass that people now come in and turn around on. I don't mind somebody pulling in my driveway and backing back out on 81, which is very dangerous, but they also come in and it looks like a pasture, but it's manicured. I keep it cut like anybody would their lawn, except it's about 4 acres, and they come in and turn around in my yard. And this is going to be an issue. Like I said, the noise is another issue that I'm concerned with. And these are big issues to me, and I would like the council to take all this into consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right.
That's all.
All right. Anyone else want to speak in opposition of the case? We have additional time. Please state your name and address for the record.
Gerald Seabolt, 360 Newmorn Drive. I'm concerned, just like Mr. Paget, I'm worried about the noise, any lighting of the events that's going to go on there. I heard she said she want to have weddings, but it sounds like now she wants to have more than just that. Worry about the traffic. We get a lot of traffic just cuts through on Newmorn. Mr. Paget was concerned about it as well, as far as like the 4-way stop. It wasn't Chambers, but at Newmorn. Y'all probably aware of that. And just worried about a residential structure being used, it sounds like, for a lot of occupants as far as our public safety goes. If you got a lot of cars in the way, and there's a lot of people in the houses, any type of event goes on there, incident, it's going to be tough for our public safety as well. And so those are just my concerns.
Thank you.
All right.
We have additional minutes. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition? Okay. If not, does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff?
I do. For
Okay.
the applicant, please.
Yes, please come forward.
Sheila, do you plan to serve alcohol at any of your events?
Yeah, they will be out.
Initially, you mentioned when you first, the first time around, that this would be for family and friends and then primarily church ladies' retreats.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You commonly serve alcohol at church retreats?
Well, I didn't just say that it would be just the church. I said it would be family and friends and groups. So, of course, not for the church people, I wouldn't serve alcohol.
And you mentioned you have a separate building, you have a pool, and then you have a separate building. And can you tell me again how large that separate building?
1,500 square feet.
How big is it?
Say again, speak.
1,500 square feet.
Thank you.
The size of a small house.
Yeah, that's that building right there.
And then will all of the events be in that particular building, or will you use your home as well?
Okay, it'll be use of my home, the backyard, and the building.
Everything.
Which is set off from the street, the 81, Highway 81. None of the affairs will go past 12 o'clock at night. We are already aware of sound ordinances, and we do not plan to play a lot of loud music and of that sort. There will be no bright lights, just regular patio string lights like everybody puts in their backyard. It's not that kind of situation at all. You know, I understand my neighbors' concerns, you know, and I respect them. But this is not like the big party house. That's not what this is, you know.
Ms. Consiglio?
So A lot of weddings that I go to, they have receptions, and usually there's a band. Did you maybe anticipating somebody having a band at one of their weddings?
If a band, it would be like a 3-piece, 4-piece jazz band.
Okay.
Not a big, loud dancing to band. I would not allow that.
Okay. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but if there's no restrictions, there's nothing to keep that from happening. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around someone that would host a wedding or host events, especially a wedding, without any financial gain. That you would just do it out of the kindness of your heart, and all they're going to have to pay for is the food. To me, that just seems like a little odd. I mean, that's good that you do that, but after a while, that's going to get a little tiring. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like somebody's paying somebody to do something. They just don't do it for free. But
may I comment that?
I'm asking you a question. It's hard for me to get my head wrapped around that.
Okay, if it's for family or friends, then that's when you don't make money. That would be sort of your gift to them. Okay, and I'm not saying I'm going to have it every month, the one every month that they allow, or the one or the 5 a year that they allow. But I want to be upfront and people to know what I am doing so that nobody is in question. If anybody calls the police, I have the right permits and everything to show them. If my neighbors are concerned, they can come talk to me. I've had several neighbors come by and ask about the conditional use signage, and I explained it to them. So I'm just trying to be above board with everyone.
And if I may, before each event, she will come to us for a special event permit, so public safety will be notified. They may even be involved. I know if alcohol is a part of it, public safety is required to attend. So all of that will be addressed before every event.
Well, this, for me, if I had a party at my house, I mean, I can serve wine now, and I can invite as many people as I want. I don't have to have an event center to do that.
Right.
And I guess that's why I'm wondering why it has to be an event center if you're just showing it for you to family and friends, because you can do that in your house now.
Yeah.
What's the line that you have to be in an event center? Because to me, then if you're saying you're an event center, then you're charging.
And not necessarily, but she wants to have event facility type events. Like, let's say she does want to have a wedding. If you want to have one wedding on your farm once in your whole life for a family member, okay, that's something you can do. But if she might want to do 4 a year, that's becoming a facility, and because it's a residential area, this is how we regulate that. So I know the terminology may sound harsh, I don't know, but that's why we regulate it this way.
Okay, that clarifies it for me, because I was going to
Okay.
say, at your house, you can hold a party.
And you're
if you want
right,
to
and we
at a
do
wedding,
allow,
yeah.
invitation-only birthday parties
Right.
without permits, but she's sort of gone beyond that. And so this is how we regulate that.
Yeah.
Right, and I respect that, and I'm glad you're doing that.
Yes.
I
I just want to say that I did it because I was told that that's what I needed to do, to be above board, and so that I do stay within the confines of the rules and regulations of Henry County. I know it's my house, I can have a party, and I can serve alcohol, but I just want to be upfront, and some of the parties will go up to like 50 or more people. I don't want everybody saying, oh, what's going on, let's call the police and stuff. I want to be above board about all this. I didn't think that it would cause an issue if I came and got the permits and everybody knew what it was I was doing, so.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I guess, I kind of look at it both ways. It's like, is this government infringement, somebody's private property, they're not being able to have a party? I mean, I'm kind of looking at it that way, too. I'm kind of looking at both sides of it. I mean, she has a right to have a party at her house or a wedding at her house. But I guess in the county, there's so many parties you can have at your house?
Not necessarily. It's just that events like weddings are sort of event facility related requests. So, and like I said, if you want to have one wedding on your farm, like once, forever, okay. But she's made it known that she might want to have more than that, and she plans to host up to 5 events per year. So like I said, this is just our way to regulate those larger scale events in residential situations.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Yes, Mr. Have you conducted any events like this yet? So right now, you're just trying to get permission before you do anything?
Exactly.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, I have a couple of questions. One is, let's talk about parking. Now, where were you, one gentleman indicated that people turn around his yard. Are you in an area that would stimulate your guests turning around in his yard?
Not to my knowledge, no. I'm on the other side of the street from him, and I perfectly understand what he's talking about because he's got that big, huge yard there, and I'm sure if people want to make a U-turn, they would turn in his grass. But right, not even further down, like 2 or 3 houses down, is a stop sign. If somebody wanted to make a legal U-turn, they would go there, stop, and make their U-turn there. I mean, I don't know about traffic, you know, but that's what I would do if I were driving and need to make a U-turn. So I understand his concern, though.
And I have an additional question. You indicated that your parties would cater to 50 or more people. How many people do you anticipate at one time at your parties?
I have decided to limit it to no more than 100 people.
Okay. All right. And
that doesn't mean every time there would be 100 people. I'm just saying if you have to put a limit, that's what I would put the limit on.
okay. And I guess that question will go back to staff. Now, when she comes in for a permit, what's the limit on those type of permits?
There's not necessarily a limit. If she requests 100 people, that would be okay. But if the event happens and perhaps she's a nuisance or something goes wrong, we can scale that down. We can make changes for the next event on her next permit.
Okay.
So it's something that would be watched very closely.
Okay. And the other question is that she can have these events 5 times a year.
Yes, sir.
And after the 5th time, she has to wait 12 months, or how long does she have to wait before?
I'm not sure.
This is per calendar year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 5 per year.
Okay, so it's 5 per year, and in January, she can start over again.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Additional question?
So she's not charging, so it's not a business, so she wouldn't have to necessarily carry extra liability insurance. The county doesn't require that. It's just homeowners, I mean.
Right, we wouldn't require additional unless she chose to take that upon herself.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And let me just say, with 5 times a year, it's not a whole lot of profit I think you're gonna make anyway, you know, doing this,
So
so.
she can have a party anyway in her
Yeah,
own house. I mean, that's
right.
what I'm saying. It's like, I don't know what
Okay.
the.
All right. Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay. If not, we'd like to call the case.
Case CU 1807, Sheila Petty of Mcdonough, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 1831 Highway 81 West in Land Lot 204 of the 6th District. The property consists of 4.32 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an event facility. This is in District 2.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I do. Chairman, I ask that the board go ahead and agree with staff recommendation to approve this request.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Richard. All those in favor? Motion denied. Okay. Do we need to make an additional motion there, Stacy, or not?
That is not necessary
Okay.
because you had a motion and a second for approval, which did not prevail. So this request is denied.
Okay. All right, let's hear the next case.
The next case is RZ 1811, Rex Road, Henry 52, LLC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R2, single-family residential, to RA, residential agricultural, for property located on Rex Road in Land Lot 166 of the 12th District. The property consists of 51.23 plus or minus acres, and the request is for residential. This is in District 5. Staff report is presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisio.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the request before you tonight is on Rex Road, and it's indicated, outlined in green and hatched in green. You can see its position relative to other residential subdivisions. The zoning of the subject property is R2, and you can see that adjoining properties are also zoned R2. The future land use map calls for low-density residential, which is very typical for this area. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request. We actually were not able to find a record of a rezoning, so we don't have any record of zoning conditions, but this subject property is zoned R2. The applicant's request is to revert back to RA, residential agricultural. The applicant has indicated that they have no development plans at this time. Staff recommends approval of the applicant's request, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Any comments from the board or staff?
Quick question. They're not going to develop it. Is that what I heard you say?
That is correct. The applicant has indicated that they have no development plans at this current time.
So why do they want to change the zoning?
That would be a better question for the applicant. I don't have details at this time.
Vicki, Ms. Consiglio.
Sorry, call on me. Is there a different tax between an R2 and an RA? Is it a different tax? Because I know commercial, you pay more. So I just
It's
wondered-
likely. I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah,
but
and it
that's a
could be
possibility.
why, you know, because I know it has, huh? If you know that answer, Jim, I mean, I didn't know if there was,
Well, I'm sure that that's the motivation,
right,
probably.
if they have to pay more taxes. Because I know we had some folks that turned their property, there was RA and they turned it into commercial, and then that went belly up, and then they came back in here and wanted it turned back to RA because they were paying that commercial tax rate, which is a lot higher. So I'm saying, just, if they're not gonna do anything, it's probably they were gonna do something and it went belly up, and now they're not gonna do it anymore.
And Mrs. Consiglio, Mr. Chair, the site plan, the survey is actually in your exhibit books, and you can tell from the site plan survey that at one point they had begun putting in the internal streets for residential subdivision, and it's my understanding that this subject property has been abandoned for a number of years. So I don't know the answer to the viability of actually developing the subject property.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Oh, Jim, Mr. Risher.
Yes, I think that this same applicant has come before us several times to revert, properties, and this, I think one was off of East Lake Extension about a year or two ago, and several other instances, and I just wondered if you knew what was going on, or is this company going out of business, or
Mr. Risher, I don't have any details. It's not my understanding that this company is going out of business.
Thank
and
you.
also what's going to happen with the remnants of the streets? Are they going to be, torn up or just left in the condition that they're in now, which I guess is not very good?
No, sir. And if I recall conversations with the applicant correctly, it's possible that there may be curb and gutter, but I don't know that there has ever been any asphalt that was laid on the subject property, and I don't know what their plans are for the remnants of these undeveloped streets, but that would be an excellent question for the applicant.
Any other questions for staff? No? Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward? If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Chair and Board. I am Dale Hall of Falcon Design Consultants, 235 Corporate Center Drive, speaking on behalf of Rex Road, Henry 52 LLC. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Dale, what's the intent here? What's actually taking place?
It's my understanding that the applicant, as has been discussed, has no plans to develop this any further or do anything with it as an R2 subdivision. They came to us and asked if they could have this reverted back to RA. It could be tax purposes, it could be other reasons, but right now, it's my understanding, he has no interest in developing it at this present time.
Now, I don't recall seeing any paving or anything in that area. Now, do you know if they've actually paved any streets in there?
It's my understanding, and I'd look at the air photo again, but it's not, it does have some curbing and some infrastructure on there, and the infrastructure would be underground utilities, some detention areas and things like that, but they're not looking to take that up or have this, any construction at this. They're looking just to down zone it back to the RA at this time.
Nothing else at this time.
Mr. Richards.
What about the sanitary sewer system that's been installed? Is that going to be, plugged up or stopped up so that it can't be used, or that's not a danger to the public that might wander?
That's a very good question. I don't know when this was actually developed and how long it has been sitting in this present state. I don't have the answer at this present time whether it's going to be plugged up. Again, it's my understanding they're just going to, for the time being, leave it like it is. It's just, that's what it is, and they want to revert it back.
Also, there's a detention pond, and what kind of state is that in? Is there a fence around it per county ordinance, or is that something that someone could fall into? I mean,
there is a detention pond there. It's not like it's 15 feet deep or anything. It's probably 2 or 3 feet deep along the area. There is not a fence around it at this present time that I remember when I went out and saw it. But it's just it's just there as it sits right now.
Well, it just seems like the property could be in a hazardous condition, because people can wander onto private property.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's trespassing, but still, I'm wondering if it's not a danger to the public left in the condition that it's in.
I'm sure if there were code enforcement issues that would be out there, my client would be more than happy to bring things up to code so it'd be safe. It's not his intent to make anything dangerous or do anything. He just wants to revert it back to the RA.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. Being that we do have a retention pond there in those areas, if it's reverted back, is there any requirements that he go in and make the necessary changes to make this place safe?
No, not that I'm aware of. This is private property, and I think that the applicant, I'm not aware of an ordinance that would require him to make any improvements to a piece of property that is not being developed. I'm not a stormwater management expert, but in my limited knowledge, I'm not aware of such a requirement.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, well, thank you. And at this time, we'll allow 10 minutes for anyone who wants to speak in favor of this case. In favor. Anyone would like to speak in favor? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this case? Does the board have any further questions for either applicant or staff?
Ms. Casey, my question is, do we have any idea the difference in terms of a tax base that we're, because it's not really clear based on the applicant why we're reverting this back?
Mr. Chair, I can tell you that I didn't explore that with the tax assessor. I don't know what that difference may be, if any.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't have anything. Mr. Richard has a question.
And this is a question for staff, and I just wonder if it would be appropriate for us to ask staff to ask our code enforcement department to, just inspect this property to see if there's any violations of county ordinances, and, either sanitary sewer or detention ponds. It just concerns me that something's left in an incomplete, state that it is.
I would be very pleased to coordinate with the Director of Planning and Economic Development to find out if that's something that we can do. And if that is something that we can do, then I will get direction from him on how to make that happen.
Right, I'm not directing anybody to make that mistake, but I would leave it to staff to look into this and do whatever it takes to coordinate, if that's possible.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions? Applicant or staff? No? All right, we'll go ahead and call the case then.
Case RZ 1811, Rex Road, Henry 52, LLC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R2, single-family residential, to RA, residential agricultural, for property located on Rex Road in Land Lot 166 of the 12th District. The property consists of 51.23 plus or minus acres, and the request is for residential rezoning. This is in District 5. Staff report presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisill, Chief Planner.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we deny the applicant's request.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Risher? I have a second from Mr. Risher. All in favor?
Let's do a discussion.
Discussion.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and typically we don't have a problem. I'd just like the board to know typically there's not a problem with reverting zonings back to the original zoning. But in this case, there are some questions in terms of why we're doing it, and there are some concerns about the property itself. So based on that, that's why I made the motion to deny this request.
Well, if we're in discussion, it is private property and it's not being developed. And those NPDES requirements is only if they're disturbing the earth, and they're not doing that. There are codes that are put in place for when you're disturbing, and I'm assuming that they had to put that detention pond, as they call it, in because they were disturbing the ground at the time. But there's no requirement if they're not doing anything or putting anything in for that, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just shocked because I thought zoning is supposed to be 30,000 feet in the air. That's what we were told. If the applicant wants to revert back to RA, I think he should be able to do that, but that's just my opinion.
Any other discussion? I have a motion to deny and a second. All in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, let's hear the next case, please.
Next case is RZ 1807, Lower Woolsey, Henry 780 LLC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA, residential agricultural, to M1, light manufacturing, for property located on Lower Woolsey Road in land lots 14 through 19 of the 3rd District and land lots 225 and 256 of the 6th District. The property consists of 683.66 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an industrial development. This is in District 2, and staff report is presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisill, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Board members, the request before you tonight is located between Lower Woolsey Road and Wilkins Road along the Clayton County line. The subject property is in the immediate vicinity of the Atlanta Speedway Airport and in the general vicinity of the Atlanta Motor Speedway. The Subject property was indicated in your staff reports as being in an area that's relatively undeveloped. But as you can see from this zoning map, there is development in the area, including the subdivision to the south that is immediately across Lower Woolsey Road from the subject property. And you can see by this map the large scale of this subject property. Fortson Road actually goes through the middle of this property. And for anyone who's actually been down Fortson Road, this is a very narrow, unimproved county road. The aerial shows you that the subject property is both wooded but also pasture and so forth. So this property is not, I'm not aware of any houses or any other type of structures on the subject property. The future land use map calls for industrial land uses for the subject property, and that is consistent with the indicated land uses for the area. As far as the proposed uses for the subject property, the applicant has indicated that they are proposing several large industrial buildings which will total over 6 million square feet of industrial space. This property, this proposed development does meet the threshold to be evaluated by the state as a development of regional impact. And that evaluation has begun, and the applicant is in the process of creating the required traffic impact study. But that impact study has not yet been completed. That impact study has to be completed, and the state has to complete its evaluation and issue what's called a notice of decision before the local jurisdiction can make the final determination. So while it is perfectly acceptable under the state regulations for the Zoning Advisory Board to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Commissioners may not make a final decision on the applicant's request until the state completes its evaluation and issues the notice of decision. Planning staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and we've noted that this is a very exciting development. This is a development which is almost certainly to impact the adjacent area and even this part of the Atlanta region, which of course necessitates the state evaluation. It's staff's opinion that a development agreement is indicated for this subject property, not only because of the scale of the development, not only because they will require for Fortson Road to be abandoned, but in large part because of the notice of decision that will be issued by the state, which will have certain requirements, which these requirements are typically incumbent upon the local jurisdiction, but it is within the local jurisdiction's purview to require these improvements that are indicated upon an applicant. The Henry County is working on a new future land use map as part of an updated comprehensive plan. This new future land use map latest draft indicates mixed use for the subject property. However, the applicant is vested under the current land use map designation of industrial. For this reason, staff has recommended approval of the applicant's request as indicated in your staff reports and your exhibit books, with the recommendation that there be a development agreement which addresses the indicated list, which began on page 4 and ends on page 5. We included this as a recommendation for these items on this list to be addressed, not necessarily that they all be impressed upon the applicant, but they simply be addressed by a development agreement. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the staff?
I do. Stacy, do you know, have a timeline for the notice of decision from the state regarding the transportation study or evaluation, approximately how long that takes?
This would depend upon when the traffic impact study is completed. And so we expect that to be very soon. And then if I recall correctly, the evaluation after that traffic impact study is received by the state can be no more than 30 days.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff?
Yeah, quick question. Traffic impact study.
Yes, sir.
Does that include the tractor trailers?
Yes, it does.
All right. Any additional questions?
And this is warehouse space?
The applicant has indicated that this is warehouse space. That was necessary in order to know how to complete the traffic impact study.
Okay.
Just a quick, maybe I should ask this question in this environment, but was that study done when all the warehouses on Kings Mill and Irish Lake and that area was done?
Yes, sir.
Notice of decision, that's going to be by the state, and the time frame you mentioned, we don't really know right now?
It entirely depends upon when the traffic impact study is completed and is received by the state.
Okay. So no guesstimate, no just like?
The applicant has indicated that it will be soon.
Okay.
And of course, it may be a better question for the applicant.
Okay. And to follow on with that, so notice of decision, so are there any other zoning issues that we've went ahead and voted on without tabling or something that we were waiting a notice of decision on that you can recall recently? Or
I don't recall that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Another quick question. You mentioned requirements for improvements.
Yes, sir.
And the state's coming back with this. Does that include widening of roads
Yes, sir.
and things like that?
Yes, sir, it certainly does.
Were there requirements for anything down on Irish Lake and Cohen? I just want to go on record to say warehouses, I live close to all of this.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just very leery that the tractor trailers have not even started. It takes me 30 minutes to go 4 miles. So, all right, I'm off my soapbox, so I'm sorry.
Right. Any additional questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Do you, if you can answer, and you may not be able to, what impact, if any, might this have on the operation of the airport?
The applicant has indicated that they intend to take advantage of the services of the airport as much as possible. It's my understanding that the airport facility is not able to handle freight flights at this time.
Okay, Mr. Richard.
Speaking of the airport, is there still an airport approach zone ordinance? I know one was done many, many years ago, and I'm sure it's been improved, but I was wondering if any of these facilities would be affected, by that ordinance.
The FAA comments should be a part of the not necessarily the notice of decision, but a part of the comments that we'll receive from the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is a part of this process. And if you'll notice, the airport property and the runway is in this area here. And if you'll notice, they have gathered the buildings on either side of this approach. And so I don't expect that there will be a large impact on the approach area of the airport.
Yeah, the 500-foot extension that's on the south, I guess the southwest end of the airport, I think that led to the partial abandonment of Wilkins and Selfridge Road. I think back when it was still a private airport, and the FAA was giving grants to private airports that were within a larger regional system, so that they could, take some of the, small freight load off of big airports. I think that was that was the reason. But you all have listed a good many conditions, and I think that, this is a situation where conditions are necessary, for public safety. But do you think that they'll be any different from what the GRTA, comes up with, or will they be somehow blended together?
Yes, sir. So the GRTA that you mentioned is the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority. Sometimes it's referred to as GRETA. And so this state agency will issue the notice of decision. The notice of decision has what's referred to as Attachment A. And Attachment A are the improvements that will be required. And they basically inform the local government that this will be the impact of this development. And even though the approval or denial is wholly within the local government, the state has put the local jurisdiction on notice that there will be no grants or financing or what have you based upon the impacts of this development, because we will then know that these are the impacts of the development that we had the opportunity to deny or to require zoning conditions of. So I just want to take the opportunity to say that I agree with you, Mr. Risher. This is such a large development, I would not want to try to list all of the conditions that I think that this warrants. So that's why staff has recommended a development agreement. And the items that are included in this list, we recommend simply be addressed, not necessarily that all of these be placed upon the responsibility of the applicant, but we recommend that they be addressed within this development agreement.
So does that mean the applicant will meet with commissioners, or how will the commissioners have an understanding of the development agreement? How will they come to terms on that?
Yes, it is typical for the decision makers in the local government to meet with the representatives of the applicant. It's typical for the attorney, the county attorney, and the applicant's attorney to become involved. But there are so many aspects of this request, including abandonment of public right-of-way. And for example, this driveway that is indicated on the applicant's site plan, that is proposed to be a private road, a private driveway, which is not open to the public. But the county is being asked to abandon a public road, which provides a connection between Lower Woolsey and Wilkins Road. So should that connection be a public road? These sorts of issues should be negotiated and determined through this development agreement process.
So what I hear you saying is our vote tonight, our decision, your work is basically the first step in a pretty long process before this actually happens.
That is certainly one way of looking at it, certainly. Well, it's just that we as staff and the applicant have already met with the Atlanta Regional Commission and representatives of the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority. We've had our methodology meeting. The applicant has begun, and I understand is nearly finished with this traffic impact study. So I don't know if we would say that this is the first step.
It's one of the steps.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, good, all right. Thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions for staff? This is kind of a more formalized step.
Yes.
You've done some ad hoc things already. This is more formalized. And once we vote tonight, before I guess before the Board of Commissioners can make a final decision, there has to be a notice of decision from the
Yes,
state.
sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm good. All right. If there is no additional question, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Again, please state your name and address for the record. And
Again, I am Dale Hall with Falcon Design Consultants, 235 Corporate Center Drive, Stockbridge, Georgia, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Lower Woolsey, Henry 780, and I have much more information and answers to this project. So, a couple things. I've been working on this project for quite some time, so.
Dale, let me just say, we do allot you 10 minutes to present as much as you can.
Okay. All right, I'll be brief because the information has been presented very well presented to you by staff, but I do want to hit on a couple items. One, the site consists of 7 proposed buildings that range from approximately 650,000 square feet up to the 1 million square feet. As you see on the design layout, and I'll actually swap that out with this one. Here's a brand new one. This is the same design as you previously had, but this drawing here was actually one we've been working with the FAA on this because they have additional requirements in some of their plans where they do have, Mr. Risher, they do have flight zone requirements and height requirements, and we had to put together this plan here that shows them. I know you can't see it, but down in this area has all the height restrictions for all the buildings that we have here. I know that there's a future mixed use plan on this. That would be very difficult in this area because of the flight zone patterns and the height restrictions in this area. So you can't have very tall buildings in this area at all. So we tried to stay out of that with our design. We also believe that there'll be a great economic impact to both the county and the whole region to develop this up to 6 million square feet or so. The taxes that would be generated from that, the fees that would be generated for that would be a boon to the economic base in this area. Like I mentioned, we're meeting with the FAA to meet their requirements. We met with Greta to get the requirements. This morning, I actually got the first draft of the traffic impact study. We're going through that. We're revising that, checking some spelling errors and whatnot, and we anticipate to have that revised and submitted back to Greta with the next step of the process very soon, the next couple of weeks. So we're moving this forward as quickly as possible. If we get through the step tonight, then we're going to start working on the development agreement and meeting with the development authority, the airport authority, to see what recommendations and requirements that they're going to have, as well as the Board of Commissioners. So there is a process that needs to go on, but the first step is tonight in front of the ZAB, and then once we get through that, then we can continue on and find out more information on what the BOC wants. And again, before we even get to that step, we need to find out what Greta wants and see exactly what their requirements for this would be. We have read the staff report. We fully agree with working on a development agreement because this is such a large project and will greatly impact the community. The items that are listed in there need to be addressed as far as design speeds of the roads, compatibility with surrounding areas. We all understand that. Curb cuts, there's standards, development standards that are in place. Those are all going to be intended to be met. But we don't want to just meet the requirements. We want to make sure that this is a project that will be beneficial to not only the applicant, the developer, also the community as a whole. So that's why we're taking all these steps and working with the staff. They've been wonderful to work with by giving us some recommendations along the way, and we think that we have a project here that will be beneficial to the whole community. I'd be more than happy to answer questions you may have directly about this project, but all in all, we are really in support and go with staff's recommendation of approval, of course, and we understand that these items that are brought forward will need to be addressed in a later date.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
We mentioned and keep talking about the airport. I'm just curious, because the airport there cannot handle freight, I'm guessing that's like a cargo jet or a larger size jet, but you would utilize the airport in what way then?
Well, what we're hoping to do and what we are actually planning to do this is these are going to be more higher tech type of manufacturing, distribution, warehousing. The way the development's going on now is the sizes of the buildings are different, the insides of the buildings are different than what have been built in the past. They're not just big warehouse and storage. So we could have individuals flying in to work at the facility. We could have items flying in and out, not just freight, but there's other uses that we could have for these buildings, and that's where we're targeting more at the higher tech type of distribution warehousing.
Okay. And I'm wondering about the future of the airport, if a runway would need to be extended. Is that prohibitive at all? I mean, I suppose it's maybe too late for that, but I'm guessing at some point they may want to do that. I'm just throwing that out there. If you don't have an answer, it's fine. I'm just thinking ahead.
That is an FAA issue. There's a lot of federal guidelines and regulations that would go along with that. We stayed out of that area, obviously, for purposes of making it easier for everyone to get in and out of that area. And the height restrictions really limited us in certain areas.
Listen, you said manufacturing?
There's a possibility to do that. We're doing it light industrial right now. We were looking at some other options earlier on, but now we're going with the light industrial, which is light manufacturing, potentially warehousing, distribution. Most of it's going to be distribution, that where we're pushing towards now.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Masala.
So, thinking outside the box, I'm thinking, what do they call those? Amazon centers where, packages can fly in and out, maybe with not freight, but just packages to go from, one side of the state to the other. I mean, is that something that would be, what do they call them? Yeah, or drones, yeah. But of course, that's an airport, so probably not. But I'm just saying, fulfillment center, like a fulfillment center.
We're looking to utilize the airport to the benefit of this site.
That's right, okay, yeah. That's, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah.
Because that's a huge demand right now, and I think that would be great for our county, as far as money.
Any additional questions?
In terms of the high-tech usage inside the warehouses themselves, the facilities, I'm like talking about some sort of advanced type conveyor belt system, computerized.
I can honestly say it's a little bit beyond my understanding. I don't do the inside of the buildings, but
yeah, I'm just curious.
I know that there's a need for certain types of warehousing in this area that might not be available, so this is a prime site, perfectly located for what is intended for this area.
Thank you.
Okay.
Interesting.
Does the board have additional questions for the applicant? Okay. If not, you may be seated now.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. Okay. I don't see anyone coming forward, so I would like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm V. Renee Crutches, 258 Fannin Lane, Mcdonough, Georgia. And while I do live in Mcdonough, hi, I just have a little concern. Yes, we need some economic boost in Henry County, not necessarily warehouses. However, I did like hearing the word high tech. And for me, high tech means high tech, highly technical jobs for our residents, meaning higher paying jobs if you guys send this to the board. My other concern is I think I heard one person say about the potential for the airport expansion if we take up all the land. But more importantly for me, nobody addressed that little hook that was carved out of these almost 700 acres, which if I'm not mistaken, it is the Fortson 4-H Club, where hundreds of kids have camps there. And this is gonna be built, all around that. And we got a safety issue. We're taking stuff from our kids, and maybe they're not in that area, but I'm sure they use it right now. So we're building this highly technical industrial area right around this 4-H Club that has not been addressed. So that's my concern, and I just want that on the record.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition of this? Anyone else speaking in opposition? Okay. Okay. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? Yes, I do. Okay, Mr. Richard.
On the matter of the 4-H camp, and I'm very familiar with that place, with the traffic studies that are proposed, could that impact be part of the consideration and evaluation of the traffic patterns of this place so as to minimize harm of the 4-H facility?
So, Mr. Risher, the Fortson 4-H Center is located in this block right here. So it's along the Clayton County line. Fortson Road is paved up until the middle of the property that's owned by the Fortson 4-H Center. It takes a hard right if you're heading north, and it goes due east, and then it leaves the 4-H Center property and goes right through the middle of the subject property. And the Fortson 4-H Center is surrounded on three sides by the subject property. You can tell from the applicant's preliminary conceptual site plan that there is no proposal to send traffic through the Fortson 4-H Center property along the public right-of-way for Fortson Road. I don't think that there would be a lot of impact on the property of the Fortson 4-H Center itself because of the traffic that would be generated by the proposed development. The traffic impact study would say for sure, but if there's going to be an impact, it will be where Fortson Road intersects Lower Woolsey Road.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. If not, we'd like to call the case.
RZ 1807, Lower Woolsey Henry 780 LLC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA, Residential Agricultural, to M1, Light Manufacturing, for property located on Lower Woolsey Road in land lots 14 through 19 of the 3rd District and land lots 225 and 256 of the 6th District. The property consists of 683.66 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an industrial development. This is in District 2, and staff report was presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Brudeseal, Chief Planner.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
We do. Mr. Chairman, make a motion that the board agrees with staff's recommendation to approve this request with the development agreement to be approved by the Board of Commissioners as noted on pages 4 and 5.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. King. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Consiglio. All in favor? Excuse me, discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. I think that concludes our cases. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn it is. Thank you very much.